Welcome, everyone, to beautiful Miami, Florida, where nearly 1,000 triathletes are gathering for today's Bud Light United States Triathlon Series event. Hello, everyone. I'm John Paul Della Camera. Alongside me is Carl Thomas. And, Carl, as much as we'd like to talk about some of the new and exciting faces for triathlons in 1989, it's really the old faces we're talking about.
We've come full circle, John Paul. In 8 years of USTS, we've seen a lot of faces. But in 1982, in the first event ever of USTS, Dave Scott and Scott Molina crossed the finish line 1-2. Last week in Phoenix, Dave Scott at 35 years old and Scott Molina right behind him. 30 seconds separated the two. They came on like gangbusters. On the women's side, Sylviane Puntos and Colleen Cannon, both multiple winners back in 1982 and 1983. Again, the same thing. Last week, blew the field away. The primary reason, we think, is the $160,000 Coke Grand Prix. All these elite pros have been refocused on USTS, and they're after the big money at season's end.
I know when we think of triathlons, we think about how grueling they are and how long they take. We think about Hawaii and the all-day affairs. This one will end quickly.
Most people, when they hear the word triathlon, they immediately think of Ironman, an 8, 10, or 12-hour endurance event. Today, our top men will go under 1 hour and 50 minutes, and the women will be right at 2 hours. So this is not that all-time gruelathon that people think of. This is a very fast, almost a sprint triathlon.
Well, our triathletes are ready. We hope you are ready as well. Right now, let's go over to the men's swim start and join our race coverage commentator, Mike Plant.
Thanks, JP. We're down here at the swim start. The last of the cruise ships has just finished turning around in Biscayne Bay here. We were over at the transition area earlier, and the top athletes looked loose and ready to go. But as they walked down here toward the swim start, their faces got a little tighter. I walked down with Rob Mackle, one of the top swimmers and one of the top triathletes overall, and I asked him if he got nervous, and Rob said every time. He said, if I didn't get nervous, I wouldn't be ready to race. Conditions today are going to be hot and humid. It's going to be real tough, but we'll promise you this, it's also going to be real fast. Stay tuned.
U.S. Triathlon Series Miami event is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official soft drink of summer. You can't beat the feeling. By Exceed, the sports nutritionals that increase energy and endurance for athletes at every competitive level. And by Bud Light. Everything else is just a light. Welcome back, everyone, to beautiful Miami, Florida. I'm John Paul Della Camera. The scene right here is breathtaking. It was shot about an hour or so ago when the waters were very calm, and they will soon be rough with the activities of a bunch of triathletes as we prepare for the swim start. And we'll prepare a little bit more as we go down to our race coverage commentator, Mike Plant.
Well, JP, it was calm down here, I'll say that, but it's not going to be for very long, of course. A lot of pre-race tension. We're looking at Scott Molina here. Scott, one of the very best in the sport for a long time on the comeback trail, and Dave Scott, 6-time winner of the Bud Light Ironman, a guy who really, really knows what to do when the tension gets high. And Jan Ripple, one of the top pros, checking every last little piece of equipment has to work. Every second counts this morning. The conditions today are going to be good. They're going to be hot. The water, though, is balmy. It's 75 to 78 degrees. Most of the athletes will be wearing wetsuits anyway, not for warmth, but for speed. I have a feeling that sign is not going to be enforced today. We're getting down real close. Again, the tension is building now. The swimmers getting in position, getting ready to fight their way to that first buoy. And off we go. A lot of furious excitement down here as the athletes fight their way out, looking for the best line, the best position. A couple of top swimmers in the field, Garrett McCarthy and Rob Mackle. In fact, this is Mackle right here in front. This is Rob stroking for the lead, leaving the rest of the field behind him. What they'll do is they'll line up behind him and swim in his wake. They'll actually save time and energy following Rob Mackle out. Rob is a swimmer for the University of Indiana, really knows how to go, and he is probably going to stay there the entire race. Long, sweeping, powerful strokes, not a fast turnover. All of Rob's work is going on under the water. Very strong swimmer.
What we're seeing is no real surprise, Carl, and that's Rob Mackle taking the early lead in the swim start.
JP, Rob Mackle is a world-class swimmer. Every race he's in, he leads the swim, and then over the course of the race, he gives up the lead to the latecomers. But I think the story today, no question, Dave Scott and Scott Molina, two giants in the sport of triathlon. They met in Phoenix a week ago. 30 seconds separated them at the finish line. If they get out of the water close together, I think that's the race.
It's a beautiful course here in Miami. The course actually surrounds Biscayne Bay. And for more on that, let's go back to Mike Plant.
When most people talk about triathlons, they tend to use adjectives like grueling, awesome, heroic. And for some of the triathletes in the Miami race, those words really do apply. But for the best athletes, the pros and many of the age groupers, this race is more of a test of speed than endurance. A 1.5K swim, a 40K bike, and a 10K run. It's now officially called the Olympic Distance Triathlon. And the top athletes will record times, especially in the swim and on the bike, that approach world-class levels. The 1.5K swim takes place right here in Miami's Biscayne Bay, with a start in Bicentennial Park. The water's warm, 75 degrees, and the winds that come off the bay really can make a difference in the race. But in any case, the pace will be furious. The best athletes will complete the swim in between 17 and 18 minutes. That's an average of 1 minute, 10 seconds per 100 meters. That's going pretty hard. Speed is the name of the game on the bike as well. After a few winding miles through the city, the athletes head out and back across the Rickenbacker Causeway, a long, flat stretch of concrete broken only by what passes for a hill here in Miami, the causeway itself. The men will ride the course in about 55 minutes and average more than 26 miles an hour. Jan Ripple from Team Pioneer, coming from behind me here, shows that the women won't be much slower than that. They'll ride an hour for the course, maybe 101, and average 24 to 25 miles an hour. The pace slows a bit on the run, kind of. After swimming and cycling for some 26 miles, the athletes leave the transition area and head out and back across MacArthur Causeway. The run course here in Miami is especially difficult, not just because of the 80 to 90 degree temperatures and the high humidity, but because it's very difficult to get out of sight of the person behind you. So you can never let back. You can never ease off. The pressure's always there. Expect the fastest times today to be somewhere between 33 and 34 minutes. That's 6 5.5-minute miles back-to-back to close out almost 2 hours of competition. Rob Meckel from Indianapolis, Indiana is still strongly in the lead on the swim. This is what these top athletes train for, of course, to be able to go this hard in the swim and still be able to get out and cycle hard and then run hard to close out the day. Rob with his long, sweeping, powerful strokes in the lead. You can see the rest of the field behind him. Not really that far behind at all, actually. We are almost ready for the start of the women's wave. They start 5 minutes after the men. And off they go. Same kind of situation as in the men. The women will look for one of the top athletes to set the pace, to set the course, and then they'll all fall in behind her. Among the top swimmers in the race today for the women, Andrea Cross and Renee Goldhirsch. Renee is actually becoming a top triathlete overall. Andrea is still learning the ropes. And it's hard to tell from this vantage point exactly who's in the lead. That could very well be Andrea Cross or Renee, either one. The women's field heading for that first buoy, which I might add is a very important turn, because the first one of the turn gets a clear run. Sometimes the women can get caught inside the buoy and have to slow down to go around. And our leader working hard. Watch the women behind her lining up and back, using her energy and strength to set the pace. And look at the men's field. Garrett McCarthy has caught Rob Meckel. So Garrett McCarthy from USC, Rob Meckel from the University of Indiana, going hard. And JP, from this vantage point, we do not have a clear leader in the swim.
So we have close races in both the men's event and the women's event. And our race coverage will continue from Miami in just a moment. Swimmers still in close pursuit of one another. We have Rob Meckel and Garrett McCarthy, two excellent swimmers. If you're looking at the elapsed time for the men, it's a good time for this Miami event as they approach the end of the race. It still looks like Meckel and McCarthy. We'll see who ends up coming out of the water first And you know that that transition area is going to be very hectic. We have Mike Plant standing by, and he'll give you more complete coverage on that. Nearing the end of the swim, it still appears to be Rob Mackle and Garrett McCarthy. Volunteers ready to help them out of the water.
Rob Mackle.
16 minutes, 9 seconds. Time still going. Rob Mackle, first man out of the water. Followed closely by Garrett McCarthy. They were all bunched up there in the swim area. Now it's onto the transition area. Volunteers encouraging everyone on and pointing out the directions in which to go. And right now, the leaders head for that transition area where Mike Plant is standing by.
So we're watching the athletes come in right now. We've got Rob Mackle coming onto the water in first. Right on his tail, Garrett McCarthy. Now, in past years, these two guys could be expected to lose the lead real fast. But I'll tell you, they've been up in front and been able to stay there. Here's Brooks Clark, and right with the leaders is Dave Scott. Dave Scott with the Centurion on the backside of his suit right there. First one out is Garrett McCarthy. Rob Mackle right on his tail. Dave Scott is number 3. You can see the red helmet cap. That indicates his lead in the Coke Grand Prix. It's fast and furious. Brooks Clark right out there as well. Dave Scott in the top 3. Right off the bike, Jimmy Riccatello heads out. Harold Robinson, last year's winner here in Miami, is right out with the lead group. And here's Molina, just leaving right now. Scott Molina in the hunt at this stage of the game with this number of guys out early. It's anybody's race. This is really exciting. Dave Scott and Scott Molina right in the hunt.
Onto the bike course, nearly a 25-mile bike course, and this follows a tough 1.5-kilometer swim. We see that Garrett McCarthy is in the lead. Let's go back down to Mike Plant.
JP, Garrett McCarthy is in the lead. Our USA swimmer got out of the transition area in front of Rod Mackle and is really doing a nice job right now. These guys are going about 30 miles an hour. Interestingly, different athletes recover from different events quicker or faster. Garrett, obviously out of the swim, has got his legs early on the bike and is really putting it to it. There he is in that disc wheel for aerodynamics, plus the aerodynamic front handlebar. Really shaves an awful lot of time off their time on the bike ride. This is got to be Steve Fitch. Steve Fitch going past Garrett McCarthy, assuming the lead on the bike ride. Steve was second here in Miami, one of the really top pros, kind of an understated guy. Doesn't really talk about himself very much. All of a sudden you look and there he is. There's Steve Fitch going hard. Now watch him on the front end of his seat, really leaning forward, pushing hard into this bike. He's really going for it. Of course, there are other athletes back there, including Dave Scott. Steve knows right now that he's cycling hard to maintain this lead.
Coming out of the water, through the transition area and onto the bike course, Carl, no one really has a commanding lead at this point.
Well, there's a group of them together. The two Scotts, Molina and Dave, are within easy striking distance of the lead. I just don't see anybody holding either of those two guys off throughout this bike ride.
That's how the men are doing. Let's go back to the waters of Biscayne Bay and see how the women are doing.
Yeah, three in the first group.
And the women appear to be doing quite well as we look at their elapsed time. When it's all over, they're going to be maybe 2 to 3 minutes apart in the overall race out of the water. And it looks like there are 3 women separating themselves from the rest of the pack. We can spot Andrea Cross, Renee Goldhirsch,
86.
Bonnie Dirty. Those are the 3. Now, all 3 are good swimmers. In fact, excellent swimmers. None are expected to be favorites to win the overall event, but it's no surprise that they're coming out of the water ahead of the rest of the pack. We look at the rest of the women bunched in together, and you can expect that some of the top favorites to win the overall event are in this group, and it'll be much easier to spot them as they come closer to the finish line and then come out of the water. This is a good time, though, for the women's swim.
92.
Volunteers will be helping them out, getting them going towards that transition area. Starting to see some of the favorites coming out. Jan Ripple coming out of the water. Kirsten Hansen has come out. Sylvian Puntos has come out. We've seen Lisa Lighty in there. And now Colleen Cannon, most definitely one of the favorites to win the overall event, coming out trailing the pack here, but it's still very early in the overall event. Volunteers helping them on their way to the transition area. It's going to be pretty hectic. Here's Mike Plant.
The first woman out of the water behind me, Renee Goldhirsch. In the past, she was expected to disappear right after the swim. She's been holding on longer and longer. She's really a factor in the race. The women we're looking for, the Puntos twins, Sylvian and Patricia, and Colleen Cannon. And finally, the second group about a minute behind that first group of 3. Here are our real contenders now. Kirsten Hansen, Jan Ripple, Lisa Leidy, Lori Samuelson, Sylvian and Patricia Puntos, Colleen Cannon, everybody right together. This is what triathlon is all about. Again, we talked about the endurance sport versus the intense sport. All of the top contenders, side by side, changing, heading off on their bikes together. This is the sport. Jan Ripple out first. Jan Ripple out first among that group. Joy Hansen heading out. Colleen Cannon heading out. Joy Hansen, certainly one of the better runners. Now we're looking at Lisa Leidy, still struggling a bit. Lisa's goal in this race was to get a little bit faster transitions. She still lost a few seconds, but she did make an improvement. I'll tell you, Lisa's thinking about it, and it's working.
And Lisa's one of the overall favorites to win this event here in Miami. The women head out to the bike course. Back to the men. They are about 32 minutes into the race, and the red helmet gives it away. Dave Scott, definitely one of the favorites to win this event, in the lead. Rob Mackel riding in second place. And coming up in third, Steve Fitch. So into the bike race, it is Dave Scott from Davis, California. He won the last event overall, and he is the current leader here in Miami. And our race coverage will continue from Miami, Florida in just a moment. We're just about 40 minutes into the race, so there's still a long way to go. We're projecting a Dave Scott, Scott Molina twosome, but now we've got Rob Mackel. Can it be a threesome, Carl?
Well, Rob's certainly trying to make it that, JP. Clearly, he spent a lot of the off-season training on that bicycle. I've got to wonder whether or not he put that kind of time in running, and if he did, yeah, he can make it a three-man race, but I don't think he did.
Mike Plant, how about an update on our bike leader?
How about an update on our bike leader is more to the point. Mackel in front at the moment, but the three have been going back and forth. Fitch, Mackel, and here's Dave Scott again surging back to the front. Dave Scott really working hard. You know, to quote myself from our Chicago race last year, I said the short distance side of the sport has moved beyond Dave Scott. Talk about being wrong. Just look at this guy. Is this the picture of fitness and health? Holy cow, boy, is he flying. Dave really working hard to reestablish his name at the very top of the sport. Interestingly, though, he has not been able to pull away from Scott or Mackel. The three men have been going back and forth. For the moment, at least, though, Scott's in front. And here's one of my very favorite triathletes on the circuit, Jimmy Riccatello, in fourth place currently, riding hard. For the moment, JP, we've got Scott, Fitch, Mackel, and Riccatello.
And that's the way things stand on our bike course. One of the important stories in this race is the comeback of Scott Molina. His early success helped to shape this sport. But it hasn't all been easy for Scott. Mike Plant has more.
From a battered trailer park in Pittsburgh, California, to a comfortable mountaintop spread in Boulder, Colorado, the rags to riches tale of Scott Molina is not exactly your typical storybook fairy tale. After dominating the sport of triathlon for 4 years, Molina lost almost 2 full seasons to what the doctors eventually diagnosed as chronic fatigue. One comeback after another failed miserably, and in the midst of it all, he was forced to deal with the breakup of his marriage. It was a painful, confusing time for the man once known as the Terminator. But he came back for real in late 1988, placing second at the Nice Triathlon in France, then winning the sport's most prestigious event, the Bud Light Ironman in Hawaii, a race in which Molina had never met with much success.
You're out there training all the time, you visualize yourself winning races. You know, and I'd been visualizing myself winning that race for 7 years. And, you know, I've never come close. So to see it, you know, on TV was really something. Yeah, that broke me up quite a bit.
But suddenly, there was a cloud over his greatest triumph. Word began to spread that on the eve of the Ironman, he'd received a letter from the French authorities notifying him that he'd tested positive there for the steroid nandrolone. Molina has consistently maintained his innocence, pointing the finger instead at what he and other American triathletes saw as sloppy methodology on the part of the French.
The testing in Nice was just chaotic. It wasn't organized and it wasn't done the way it should be. Testing is a very serious thing, and IOC has strict written procedures that the testing people must follow.
Nevertheless, his job in 1989 is to prove not only that he can still win, but that his success is due to nothing more than skill and hard work.
But that skill and hard work did not help Scott Molina today. Just moments ago, we saw him coasting back off of the course. He is done for the day because of a mechanical problem.
So Scott Molina, whose comeback story is so full of humanity and competitiveness, ends with a technical problem less than a mile into the bike course. It's all over. He's going to have to think about next week, the week after.
So there is no Scott Molina. As we look at the elapsed time for the men, they are better than 51 minutes on the bike course. And one of the top challengers is now gone from the race. They're headed into the area called Virginia Key. Police officer leading the way, and it's Rob Mackle, who is now in front of Dave Scott. So Mackle #1 and Scott #2. Let's head back to Mike Plant.
Dave Scott is really in a very comfortable position right now because he knows he can outrun Rob Mackle. Mackle learned how to ride hard from Mike Tig last year. Dave is kind of learning the ropes again. It's almost as if he's a rookie for the second time out. They are about 2/3 way through the bike course right now, headed out toward a real tight turn around the end of Virginia Key where they'll head back and then head back toward the transition area. And here are our second pack of men. It's hard to tell who they are right now, but these are the guys that are back off the top three. You've got Dave Scott, Mackle, Fitch, and then these three fellows behind. Obviously, the places in the top 10 are still wide open. Remember, for the most part, this is a long, flat, wide-open bike course where the athletes can see each other for miles. And here's our leader in the women's race, Jan Ripple, the 33-year-old mother of 3 from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who's really become one of the top names in the short-distance side of the sport. Right now, Jan is cycling for her life because she's aware of the running abilities of Sylvian and Patricia Puntos and Colleen Cannon behind her. The women's field overall is becoming more and more competitive, and we talked with Jan yesterday about the fact that some of the women are having a little trouble dealing with that increased competitiveness.
I really believe that the women, even off the course, are too competitive with each other. I think that once a woman starts doing really well, the other women don't seem to want to be as good of friends with her anymore. Maybe there's a little jealousy there. I don't know. I think I race better when the competition is better. You can't slack off, and you can't think about all those competitors. You can only worry about yourself.
Jan Ripple continues to lead the women on the bike course. The men are coming back now into the transition area. That's Rob Mackle, who is right now leading Dave Scott. Rob Mackle with a great bike time, same with Dave Scott. Mike Plant, what's the feeling in the transition area?
Scott Molina is conspicuous in his absence here. Dave Scott leads Rob Mackle off the bike. Rob is an improving runner, but he's certainly not fast enough. At least history has shown that he is not fast enough to be able to run away from Dave Scott. Dave has consistently, over the past years, been the fastest runner of the day off the bike.
A 40-second lead over the next man in.
So Dave Scott heading out a little bit behind Rob Mackle. Rob doing a nice job in the transition area. He'd better do a nice job in the transition area, though, I'll tell you that, because Dave is going to be coming hard behind him. From where we're looking here, Rob Mackle is about to learn a lesson in triathlons. Rob is kind of settling into a pace, and Dave goes by him here. This is what makes Dave Scott, Dave Scott. When he's on, when he's ready to race, nobody goes harder and faster. Dave has an interesting philosophy. He really doesn't just like to win. I've seen him race time and time again, and what he likes to do is not just win, but destroy his opponents. He went by Rob Mackle, I don't know, and left Rob sitting in the middle of the street like a stone. Dave is the only guy, as a matter of fact, at the Ironman in Hawaii to break 2:50 for the marathon. He's done that twice. 2:49 in the marathon at the Ironman. We're looking right now at a picture of what looks to be the second group of women. Yeah, you can see that on the bike. Jan Ripple in the lead, but the second group with all of the top contenders trying to keep Jan at least in their sights. You see the red cap on the side. That's got to be Sylvian Puntos, Lisa Leidy, Kirsten Hansen, Colleen Cannon are all in this group coming up over the Rickenbacker Causeway. Jan trying to do what Lisa Leidy tried to do here in Miami last year, successfully, I might add. Lisa, our defending champion here in Miami. Jan trying to build a lead so that the fastest runners can't come back on her. Stay tuned. We'll be back.
For the run, but at this point, Carl, is he looking for Molina? Does he know that he's out?
I don't know if he does or not, JP. He probably doesn't know for sure whether Molina's in the race or out of the race. He clearly knows he has Rob Mackel put away. This is Dave Scott's race. However, last week in Phoenix, Scott Molina made up time on Dave Scott in the run. If, in Dave's mind, if Scott is still in the race, he can still be captured. At the point that Dave will know that one way or the other is the run turnaround. When he's running back across the causeway, the longer he doesn't see Molina, the more comfortable he becomes. But right now, Dave Scott's running for his life.
There's a lot of activity in the women's transition area. We have Mike Plant standing by.
So we're looking at Jan Ripple off the lead in first place. A couple of days ago when we talked to Jan, she expressed a lot of fear about the running ability of Sylvian and Patricia Puntos and Colleen Cannon. Jan Ripple right now is running for her life. We're waiting now for Sylvian, Patricia Puntos, and Colleen Cannon. Here they come. And here indeed comes the second group, and lo and behold, Colleen Cannon is right at the very front. That's Colleen in the pink helmet. Right behind her, Lisa Leidy, last year's winner here in Miami. Lisa's not the runner she needs to be to win this race at this stage of the game, nor is Renee Golders, who here is looking for her place in the bike rack. That's a good way to lose a lot of time. We can see at the far end of the transition area, Sylvian Puntos just taking off her red bike cap cover, and there's Kirsten Hansen and Colleen Cannon right behind her. As a matter of fact, Colleen Cannon really flying right now. Look at her go. She has not given up the chance of catching Jan Ripple.
Sylvian Puntos is the fifth one out of transition.
It is still early in the women's run course, but right now, Carl, Jan Ripple has the lead.
Well, Jan had a great bike ride, JP. She put a minute and a half on this very tough field, but we have a couple of factors. We have heat, we have humidity, we have the clear exertion factor, and Jan has a history of falling apart in the run. The question now is, can she hold on?
Mike, on the men's side, this is clearly Dave Scott's day.
Well, it really is Dave Scott's day, JP. It's hard to believe, watching this guy run, that he's 35 years old. I mean, he's as fast as he ever was. And this is the turnaround. Now, Dave sees the first man is not Scott Molina or someone else. It's Rob Mackel, who he knows he can outrun. And one of those other guys has got to be Steve Fitch. Rob is just hanging on here. His best events are gone. The swim is gone. The bike is gone. Now, what Rob has to do is try to hold on to as many places as he can. The issue of Dave being a long or a short distance triathlon has been around for a while. I talked to Dave yesterday about that.
You know, everyone said, listen, Dave Scott's the Ironman champion. He only do things over 8 hours. And looking back, at one point, I was dominant in the short races. Everyone else caught up, moved past me, and I didn't feel as though they needed to do that. If you try to live up to the media's satisfaction, you try to live up to your peers' satisfaction, you're never going to succeed. And so I just went back and said, listen, I know I could be a better athlete. I know I can improve on what I've done. If that means winning some of the Bud Light USTS races, if that means winning the Ironman again, I'm going to set my goal and I'm going to try to do it. And I'm going to do it.
History has shown in this sport that when Dave Scott says he's going to do it, he does indeed. This is a guy who is driven by goals. Here's our second and third place guy, and we can tell now that the second place, the guy on the right, in any case at this point, is Lance Armstrong. This is rather surprising. Lance Armstrong is a 17-year-old kid from Plano, Texas, who emerged at the beginning of last year and surprised everyone with his cycling ability, but not his running ability, I'll tell you. And in second place, moving ahead now and looking maybe like he might be in control or taking control is Steve Fitch. Steve Fitch from West Chester, Pennsylvania. He was second last year in Miami. And here's our winner, Dave Scott. The winner last week at the season opener of the Bud Light USTS in Phoenix. Dave's taking his second USTS win in a row, and it's been years and years since he's done that. The winning time last year, almost a minute, an hour, 51 minutes. Actually, a 1:50:57 or 58, I think. Dave Scott is easily under that mark. He's going to be way under 1:50. So not only has Dave caught up with the guys who have been faster than he over the last several years, Dave Scott has passed them. Look at this, 1:47 something up there. My goodness, what a great performance. Once again. Oh, what a great job. Dave Scott, 6-time winner of the Ironman, now 2-time winner of the 1989 Bud Light USTS. Great race. Really nice job for Dave Scott. And the race for second place is heating up. Steve Fitch still in second place, but Lance Armstrong has not dropped back. I thought he might be dropping back, but not so. Lance, interestingly enough, is a member of Team USA cycling team. He will be going to Moscow in July to compete in the World Junior Cycling Championships. But he may... He can't decide whether he wants to be a cyclist or a triathlete. I'll tell you, he's doing both very well right now. And as a matter of fact, he's now challenging Steve Fitch for second place. The 17-year-old kid, hungry, and he smelled the finish line, and now he's taking the race back from Steve Fitch. Now, Steve is either going to coast in on Lance's tail and then try to outsprint him at the finish line. No, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you what's happening. The 17-year-old kid is running away from Steve Fitch right now. He just really put it in high gear, and Steve Fitch has lost him. Lance Armstrong, once again from Plano, Texas, just 17 years old, the future of this sport. Last year, Lance graduated from Plano East Senior High School in Plano, Texas. And if we talk about him being the future of the sport, we really mean it, because as a matter of fact, when he was 13, Lance won an Iron Kids event, a triathlon event designed for kids. And he is now right there among the top pros literally in the world. And interestingly enough, Lance is, look at him go. I'll tell you, cocky. You can only do that when you're 17. Lance's mom is just 35 years old. She's as old as Dave Scott. So really, Lance could be Dave Scott's son. But today, he is not Dave Scott's son. In fact, he is Dave Scott's competitor. Lance Armstrong finishing in second place, out-sprinting Steve Fitch to the finish line. What a great job for Lance today. He's got to be high as a kite. And here's Steve Fitch. Look, I'm sure that he must absolutely be shocked that this young kid who does not have the reputation, even many thought the ability to be able to run by him. Look at him, his hands out. He's just going, what in the world do I have to do to win a race? Dave Scott in first place, Lance Armstrong in second, and astonished Steve Fitch in third.
On the men's side, it was a day for the young and the old in triathlon. On the young side, a real surprise, 17-year-old Lance Armstrong finished in second place to the big winner, Dave Scott.
Dave Scott, 6-time Ironman champion, JP, in the best shape he's been in since his last Ironman victory in 1987, obviously competing this year with a vengeance. Lance Armstrong, 17 years old, obviously the wave of the future, had the race of his life today. Old and new, 35-year-old veteran, the 17-year-old newcomer.
Carl, on the women's side, it looks like we may have a race after all. Jan Rippel had a lead. We saw no one behind her. Now we're seeing some figures.
The lead is evaporated. Sylviane Puntos and Colleen Cannon running shoulder to shoulder are reeling Jan Rippel in. They will overtake her. It's now a question of who's going to win between Sylviane and Colleen.
This might be the race of the day. We'll stay with it when we come back to Miami. It's not as great as it once was. Let's go back to Mike on the run course.
That's correct, JP. The lead is not as much as it was before. Sylviane Puntos seems to be closing fast right now. I will take issue, though, however, on one point, and that is that Jan Rippel has not got a history of falling apart in races. She has had some trouble in the long, hot events, but she's a very fast runner on the 10K course. It's just simply that Sylviane Puntos is faster. Sylviane, to win last week's Bud Light USTS race in Phoenix, ran a 35:23 10K to close out the day. That's really running. And as a matter of fact, her sister Patricia was even faster than that. So I would say that Jan has her hands full, probably with more than she can handle at the moment. Sylviane closing hard, 2-time winner of the Bud Light Ironman, and the 1983 Bud Light USTS national champion. So Sylvian has done it all in this sport. She's won it all. She's still on top and still one of the very fastest, finest runners the sport has ever seen. I will say also, though, that Jan's job is not to lose concentration when Sylvian comes by her. We'll see if she tries to stay with her or just tries to hang on. Sylvian goes by without a word. Now let's see how tough Jan Ripple is. There, I like to see that. Jan really closed up on her. Look, and she's trying to stay tight, trying to stay tight. Nice job. Up, she just looked. Yeah, the race for first place is over, and Sylvian Puntos is right on schedule. We talked to her about that earlier.
I have to start the run with Colin, because last week Colin just ran 30 seconds slower than me, so that's not a lot. I like to be in the back for until the 5 miles. You don't like to be in front. You're always scared, you know, somebody will come, and it's easier to catch people than be catcher.
Jan Ripple now in second place. Her job is to hold off Colleen Cannon. She knows that Cannon is back there somewhere. She has to, and she's lost Sylvian Puntos right now, and it's very difficult. Here's Sylvian going through an aid station. She still has Colleen Cannon on her mind as well. As she told us yesterday, she knows that Colleen can run well. Jan Ripple has to fight the letdown, the psychological letdown of being passed. She has to stay in there now and fight hard for second place. There's a big difference in money between first and second and third place, so it's important for Jan to stay there, get all of the Coke Grand Prix points that she can, and earn as much money as she can. She needs to salvage the day. And Colleen Cannon, look, boy, does she look strong in third place. We'll be back for the dramatic conclusion of the women's race in just a minute.
Everybody's talking about it.
Sylvian Puntos from British Columbia, Canada, two-time winner of the Bud Light Ironman in Hawaii, 1983 USTS champion, one of the pioneers in this sport who has stayed on top. Sylvian has announced that one of her competitive goals this year is to win the Coke Grand Prix and to wear the Coke red jersey at every race. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of her this year, certainly in this position, winning the race. And I should make a couple of notes on time here. Lisa Leidy's winning time from last year was almost 2 hours and 5 minutes. Sylvian is going to be way under that. Somewhere in the neighborhood, looks like, yeah, see, 1:57 and change. This time would have won the men's race not too many years ago. Today, she's almost 8 minutes under the course record. That's incredible. What a great performance by Sylvian Puntos. And in second place, Colleen Cannon from Boulder, Colorado. Colleen Cannon Kashansky, by the way, she was married just last year. She still races under her Cannon name. Another great time. And here's Jan Ripple. In third place, a courageous third place, I must add. She hung in there real tough. 33-year-old mother of three. Still fast, just not quite fast enough today to overcome first place Sylvian Puntos, second place Colleen Cannon, and Jan Ripple in third. A great race.
Carl, it's been a great day here in Miami with a surprise or two along the way.
Well, on the men's side, JP, big story, Scott Molina's mechanical failure on the bike ride. Dave Scott, back to form, back-to-back USTS wins. He hasn't done that since 1983. And, of course, Lance Armstrong, 17-year-old, coming from out of nowhere, first on the national scene with a race of his life today, finishing second.
On the women's side, for most of the day, it looked like it was going to be Jan Ripple's day to shine.
But as happened in Phoenix last week, Sylvian Puntos and Colleen Cannon running together through the stretch, past Jan Ripple, and at the wire, Sylvian being able to outlast Colleen. Sylvian first, Colleen second, and Jan third.
Some great pros were on hand here in Miami, but we've got some top amateurs as well. Some very special people we'd like you to meet when we come back. You can age from 15 to 70 and over. Mike Plant has more.
Yeah, JP, the age groupers are the heart and soul of this business, I'll tell you. This is Leslie Stenz McDowell. She's 43 years old, an age group winner at the Ironman, and a national champion at the USTS.
You have to stop telling yourself, well, gee, I'm over 30. And I've been programmed to think that I'm not supposed to be doing these things. I started running 7 years ago, and my PR is quite wonderful. I'm very happy with it, and it's getting better. And my training runs are getting faster. You know, I'm running comfortably, and all of a sudden I look at my watch, which I try not to make every training run into a time trial, but I do. And I'm amazed at what's happening. And I think it's a mindset. You just have to stop telling yourself. Just don't even think about how old you are. Just think how you feel. I don't think you have to suffer. This is such a great sport. And you don't have to sell your home and your kids and divorce your spouse. You can stay in and do this, and you can excel.
Once again, Leslie sends McDowell heading out onto the bike course. One of the best age group triathletes really in the world. Of course, Leslie is going for a gold medal, a first place in the Elite Masters division. There are other athletes in the race, most of the other athletes in the race, who have nothing really to gain here at all, except the T-shirt, maybe a sense of themselves. Some selected age group results from the day. Once again, ages from 15 all the way up to 70 and over. An awful lot of people doing this race just for the personal satisfaction. Jody Smith from Downington, Pennsylvania, in a 30 to 34, a former professional who's moved up or down, as the case may be, in the age groups. Many of these names familiar to the athletes within the sport as being among the very best age groupers literally in the world. Connie Case, our winner in the 35 to 39 from Pompano Beach, Florida. USTS, over or very close to 20,000 athletes competed in the USTS in 11 cities this year. It all leads up to the Bud Light USTS National Championship, for which the athletes must qualify at Hilton Head, South Carolina on September 30th, 1989. A race that is acknowledged to be the short distance national championship in the sport, certainly. And a whole bunch of finishers in age 60 and in the age groups above, people who are making fitness work for them, a fitness lifestyle, at ages that one might expect people to be sitting back watching television. And our oldest finisher today, age 73, James Lee from Lake Worth, Florida.
And we'll talk to some of the winners when we return to Miami. California, Carl Thomas had a chance to talk to Dave after the race.
You have been running with a vengeance.
Well, you run hungry when you're in the lead. You know, it's a nice feeling to get off the bike and know that, you know, everyone's equally as tired, and I've always felt comfortable with my runs. So even though it looked like I had some snap, I was kind of weary out there. It wasn't until about mile 4 that I could see the rest of the group, and I felt pretty comfortable with my lead.
Well, coming into today, it was set up Dave Scott versus Scott Molina, and you guys came off out of the swim together, headed out on the bike course, and as we know now, Scott had a technical problem. When did you hear about that?
Well, I was unaware that he had problems, and in fact, I didn't know until the end of the race. I heard as I came in with Rob Mackel at the end of the bike that Scott Molina was no longer a factor, and I didn't know if he had mechanical trouble or was just having an off day. And you know, that's one of the really unfortunate things about the race. I had a flat earlier this year in a race, and you pray that that wouldn't happen, and unfortunately, it hit him today.
What are your plans for the rest of the season?
Well, I'm going to race quite a bit, contrary to what I've done. I think, you know, as long as you race, you stay pretty hungry, and you know, all those young guys keep me on my toes. So I'm going to come back and do the Bud Light Atlanta in a couple of weeks.
Sylvian Puntos was the winner on the women's side. Colleen Cannon 2, Jan Ripple 3. A great day for Jan, although a tough ending. I spoke to Jan after the race.
At what point did you see or feel her coming?
Actually, I never saw her because I never turned around and looked. And then I just felt some little footsteps right at, I believe, before the 5-mile mark of the run. And I thought, just try to hang on her back, and I couldn't. I couldn't hang on to her.
Was there a turning point for you at the race? I thought you came out maybe 6th on the bicycle, and then you had about a minute and a half behind. Where was a real... 2 minutes?
Just at the turnaround, you can see everybody, and I saw I was in a good second place, for sure. And Jan was not very far, but I was very tired too, so just...
Tell me about your running. That seems to be your specialty, and you had an excellent time today. How hard or how much harder do you work on that part of your game?
Pat and me, we are runners since a long time, so we always run pretty good. And we still do some 10K, 20K during the winter time, so it's our best event.
The Bud Light U.S. Triathlon Series is produced by CAT Sports. This telecast has been a presentation of Bud Sports, aired through the facilities of ESPN. For Carl Thomas and Mike Plant, I'm John Paul Della Camera. So long, everyone, from Miami.